Good morning, everybody. It is another week. We're back. We're here.
We're
Some of,
here.
some of us have shifted and located somewhere else. I'm back in a hotel room again. You know, what's funny is that it's like, 7 o'clock in the morning and it's still dark out. So I started working about 4 a.m. and I sat down and I'm getting everything all squared away, right? Because I'm completely, relocated right now just for several weeks. And I turned the light, I turned the camera on and everything was all dark in the background. And I had this one light up in front and I looked like the head from Sinead O'Connor's video. And because I got a black turtleneck on, I got, dark hair, black headband going. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I had to get some more background light going.
Brenda face floating.
Just like I would just like zoom right on in. It was crazy. Speaking of crazy, we've had a lot of crazy going on over here this past week.
Just a little bit.
Yep, exactly. So
there are times when I'm glad to be living across the pond, as they say.
I bet. So if you are just tuning in for the first time and have been doing what I've been doing mostly, and that is ignoring as much news as possible, we are actually going to talk about what's going on with the protests. But again, we're not political. We're not going to talk about a political agenda. We're not going to talk about what we think. All we're going to talk about is how you can address your people issues at work based off of these kind of sensitive issues. So, and Suzanne, a lot of this is going to be focused on Suzanne because she's written a phenomenal article. You guys have to check it out. It's on Inc.com, but what is the title of it?
It's called What to Do If a Capitol Hill Rioter Also Happens to Be an Employee.
Yeah. So, which is a good thing because we're seeing in the news about individuals who have shown up and people who are getting fired. And you know what? First and foremost, I think we should address this one thing, and that is neither Suzanne and I support what has happened, regardless of what political party that we're registered under. We don't support any of it, and it's unfortunate. And people died as a result of it, and to us, that's completely unacceptable.
No,
So
violence, not, no.
no, I mean, we're a nation of laws, and we do not support how it went down, why it went down, and that we have no problems coming out and saying. So this week it's going to be interesting. It's more political sensitivity coming out left and right. We have no idea what's going to happen. We can only go by what the media is telling us, and I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. But
That's for sure.
yeah, but that's again not what
That's not our topic. We're going to talk about if you had employees involved in this protest or really in any protest that gets out of hand. And I think that is something. I don't think that the age of protests is done. I don't think this is the last one. I think this topic is going to come up again and again and again. I mean, it's been going on for almost a year now anyway. And so if you have no employees involved in this, and chances are you don't, I mean, this is a huge country. Most people were not involved in any way, shape, or form. But the chances of you going throughout the next year with nobody involved in a protest that turns violent are pretty slim, actually. Especially if you live in a big city, you're going to be hit by it in some fashion, either an employee or it's on your street or something like that. If you're living in a small rural town, you can probably turn this off now, but you wouldn't because you love us.
No, we don't want you to turn anything off.
We want you to listen and then to send links to all of your friends.
That's right. There you go. But I mean, there are going to be people who want to go and travel to these protests, as we've seen. And if that's the case, let's revisit what a protest means quickly to an employee. It is a protected right. It's something that they have the ability to do. Now, we're going to shorten this as a big yeah, but because I can tell she's chomping
I'm
at the
gonna
bit
yeah,
over there.
but
I know she's chomping at the bit. But protesting is one thing, violence is another.
but to be clear on protesting, you have a First Amendment right to protest.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
I 100% back anybody who wants to protest for anything as long as they're peaceful. I support their rights to do that. I personally wouldn't punish anybody for protesting
Yeah.
anything as long as they're doing it peacefully. But you don't have the right to free speech at work if you work in the private sector. If you work in government, that's a different story, but we're not going to deal with government employees right now. But in the private sector, you don't have that right to free speech at work. But a lot of states give you that right to political free speech at work. And this is really important because in a lot of states, you cannot fire someone, discipline someone for holding a political opinion that is different than yours or different than the company represents. Not in all states. In some states you can, because there's no right to free speech at work unless the state comes and says. And
do you have a list of those states by chance?
I do have a list of those states. What I have, it's not a list of like this state has this right. It's a list of each state. We can put it in the show notes, or you can find it on my article about the Capitol Hill rioters. There's a link to that. California is a big one. And California says employers may not adopt or enforce any rule, regulation, or policy that forbids or prevents employees from taking part in politics, becoming candidates for public office, or becoming candidates for public office. Employers may not control or direct the political activities or affiliations of employees or threaten to fire an employee for engaging or refusing to engage in certain political activity. Political activity covers any activity related to a candidate or cause. So basically, if you're in California and your employee went and protested and they didn't break any laws, they didn't commit any violence, they didn't knock down anything, as long as they were just protesting, legally, you can't do anything about it, even if you 100% disagree with them. And this applies for every protest. If I want to go protest, I don't know. I don't even know what hot button issues there are other than these ones that are the current hot buttons. But, if I want to go hold my protest for, I don't know, free bacon, that'd be good. Suzanne's free bacon protest.
As in acquiring free bacon or freeing the source of bacon?
Source of bacon. I don't know. I haven't thought through this. But you can say, boy, that's ridiculous. That's the last thing the government needs to worry about is providing free bacon. And what about Jews and Muslims who don't eat bacon, and vegetarians and vegans? And what are you? It doesn't matter. As long as it's a political activity, I can go out there with my sign and, say, support House Bill 17, free bacon for all. That's something that I can do if I'm a California employee. Other states have, California, to the best of my knowledge, is the strongest protection. Other states have different ones. Connecticut says that you can't fire or discipline employees for exercising their First Amendment rights unless it interferes with the employee's job or performance or working relationship with the employer. And so that's a huge difference from California, where California is like, you can protest, support whatever you want. And Connecticut's like, you can, as long as it doesn't interfere with your relationship with your employer.
So here's a question for you. Does that also include in your list, just out of curiosity, Does it include what happens if an employee shows up to protest wearing company apparel?
Well, see, this is where I think with Connecticut, um, because to me, if I show up wearing my company apparel and there was a guy who was protesting with his employee name badge on, like, why? Why did you leave that on? I mean, I don't know where he's from, but if I was a Connecticut employer, I think I could make a strong argument that by wearing the name badge, that interferes with the relationship.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas in California, I don't think there's an exception for that. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I'm certainly not a California lawyer. Um, so if you're in California, please consult your local employment attorney. Actually, if you're anywhere, please consult your local employment attorney. But I just want to point out that there are differences. So you may be really upset, and you might have been really upset this summer on the Black Lives Matter protests or anything like that. Um, you're still subject to these laws.
Do you like them or not?
If you like them or not. Yeah. I mean, like New Hampshire, they only have voting intimidation is prohibited.
Yeah.
So this isn't a voting intimidation thing. So in New Hampshire, I'm guessing, not a New Hampshire lawyer, that you could fire someone because it's not voting intimidation.
And I've known a lot of businesses over the business owners and leaders over the years who do get very concerned about besmirching the company's name and reputation, because it is a black mark on branding, and that's a big effort. And all it takes is one piece of bad publicity. And people say it's like, well, bad publicity is good publicity. No, it's not. It's still bad publicity. That's a cop out in my opinion. But if you have somebody who's out there exercising their First Amendment rights, and you have somebody out there they may be wearing a company jacket where you had their name embroidered in on their logo, because that's the jacket they wear all the time, right? It's the most comfortable to them. It's whatever. I mean, I've had several of those jackets, right? But unless you make your policies very specific on company apparel, and if that jacket that you gifted them with your company logo on it and their name really is only supposed to be for employee uniforms, then add in your policy that company employee uniforms are not to be worn at private events or personal or public events or something like that. Make it clear, and you can do that.
Yeah, and that's something that I think right now, if you don't have a policy in place, as I said, this isn't going away. There will be protests again. And actually, there have been protests since this January 6th one. There were huge protests in Portland again. This is not going away. So please sit down and write one. And I think, as Brenda said, it's really important that you include do not wear company branded apparel if you're doing a political activity or whatever. And
outside of work.
yeah, and maybe this is the time, instead of being like, "Ooh, look, it's free advertising if my people wear their jacket." In the past, that was probably a good idea. Today, it may not be such a good idea. And you can sit down and decide. It's not that there's a one answer fits all in this situation. It depends on your business. It depends on your location. It depends on your employees and your company message and what you are. All of those things you can decide, but you really need to make that policy and make it clear that if you have a policy against wearing the company thing to a protest, and then somebody wears a company thing to the protest, it's going to be a lot easier for you to discipline for them violating the policy
Right.
than it is to discipline for taking a political stand.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people are really, really, really upset, but I just want you to think, how do you want to be treated if the shoe's on the other foot? And that's something that we really, because we should be a nation of laws, and our businesses should have policies, and we need to apply them equally. So if you come down really hard on these Capitol protesters, And then next week, there's a Black Lives Matter protest that also turns violent. You're going to have to come down really hard on that. And maybe you support one and not the other. I don't know. Um, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of overlap between those two groups, but you'll need to have your policies be consistent, especially if you're in a state that prohibits discrimination based on political activity.
Yeah.
So I just really want you to think, okay, I can't go on my personal feelings here. I need to follow the law.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to share many years ago when I was working for my first Fortune 500 company, which was with Warner Brothers. It was a division of Warner Brothers. It was very clearly stated in our policy that we were not permitted to wear company branded apparel that is our uniforms out to public events, bars, restaurants, things like that. We could not, we were not prohibited. We were not permitted to represent the company outside of working hours. So we could, we could wear our uniforms to and from work, but we couldn't and of course I did because I was 22 and an idiot. So I'll just openly fess up right now. I went and had, would sometimes go out and grab a cocktail on my way home, just one, but I was still in my work uniform. And then I got to the point where I just actually brought a change. I brought I had a spare shirt in the car. So that way I just, quickly changed before I went into a bar or anything like that. But no, it's very much, it's very much a thing. It's not something that's a common practice anymore, but it is very much a thing. And,
Yeah, well, I was going to say, we had the same policy when I worked at Burger King in high school, but I was never tempted to wear my Burger King uniform out because it was polyester double knit. So no.
it was cool. It was happening. Well, the other thing that, keep in mind too, folks, is that, there's a lot of passion around what's going on right now, a lot of it, and it is all over the place. And right now, it's not as equally divided as it once was. There are people that are very despondent and disrupted about, the actions of all politicians, including the president right now. So it's all over the place. And just because somebody has an opinion or has an emotional reaction or attachment to the chain of events doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be we went from being very divided in this country to now and more of a cookie cutter kind of mindset to now it's just all over the place. So just remember that you have to get, if you're in a leadership position, you have to get your brain wrapped around how you feel and address it before you start addressing other people. Because right now, people need leadership more than anything else. And when times get really, really tough, you can't have a leader crapping out, or you can't have a leader getting overly emotional about things or overly excited or, knee-jerk reactions, because these are the things that are going to get you, you're going to lose good people. It may even, open up an opportunity for some major conflict that could lead to an employment lawsuit. And whatever decisions you are wanting to make right now that involve what's going on in the political landscape, employees protesting and employees speaking about it, policies, whatever, make sure that you bounce this stuff off of your employment attorney, because they're the ones that are keeping the pulse on this. And it's, I love it when Suzanne says this. If you're going to go to court over something, don't be the first employer to go to court for
That's
it.
right. You don't want to be the test case.
No, you do not, because your name could be case law forever.
That is right. And I am grateful for people that are willing to do that from time to time.
Yeah, but not ours.
No,
Not
no, no, no. And there are hills that are worth dying on. Absolutely there are. And I'm not here to tell you that there are not. And you get to choose what those hills are as a business owner. As HR, you have your hills to die on, but it might not be the same as the CEOs. And then you have to decide where you draw your line. So there can be times when it's perfectly logical for you to quit a job because of a political disagreement. That may be your hill to die on. You're like, I am out of here. That's fine. I do generally advocate finding a new job before you leave the old one, unless you come from old money or something, um, which I don't. If you have spare money, you can send it to us. But otherwise, those things are, but the business owner gets to decide ultimately what he or she is willing to go to court for, what he or she is willing to battle for. And I'm not saying that following your employment attorney's advice always works out golden, because clearly it doesn't, but you're going to have a far greater chance of not ending up in court if you speak with your employment attorney first. And one thing that my employment attorney friends love when I talk about, it's always, always, always cheaper to call them when you have the question than to call them when you have the cleanup.
Yeah, I'd rather spend $350 for a good hour conversation than $350,000 defending a case I could have prevented.
Absolutely. And to be honest, $350,000 is on the low end if you end up in court.
It is.
And that's not even if you lose. That's just attorney fees.
Yeah, that was my metaphor.
Yeah. So I really think you need to have your policies in place.
Yeah.
And let's make them now. If you don't have them already, on what you're going to do in these kind of situations. And I also think it's very important that you treat people that have broken the law differently than people who are just raising their political voice.
So let's talk about breaking the law here for a quick second. So let's say, for example, you have an employee that is out at a protest, doesn't matter what program it is or what the purpose is or whatnot, and that person gets arrested. I want to make sure that you guys understand you cannot or should not be terminating your employees because of an arrest record, because here in this country, we are innocent until proven guilty. And if you are terminating somebody against an arrest record, you are terminating them without a conviction, and or you are terminating them without their ability to have their day in court and make that fight that they are not guilty. Notice I didn't say innocent, because there's if they're getting arrested for something, there's probably some little involvement. But if you are, and that could potentially, depending upon how your state's ban the box laws falls into place, just don't start making arrests or don't start making terminations based off an arrest record. And you might say, okay, Brenda, well, what happens if they're sitting in jail waiting for their trial? You know what? Put them on an administrative leave until you get the determination. And if they are convicted, they understand what their sentence is. And then once you get closer to that court date, and you understand what their sentencing is, start talking to your employment attorney on what you should and shouldn't do. I had an instance years ago where we had an employee who got into a violent altercation with his wife, and he hid it from us. It was reported to me because he was running his mouth about it and talking about his court case to somebody who really didn't like him, and he thought he did like him, and so they wound up reporting him. And I monitored the whole situation from afar. And once the conviction came down, he was actually remanded into custody immediately. And we had to put him on administrative leave. But once the no, wait a minute. We put him on administrative leave once the conviction came down, and then we interviewed him and then conferred with the attorney. We terminated him because this wasn't his first time getting into a violent altercation with his wife. And so it was progressive. So when we looked at each instance that had happened, we saw this progression starting to take place and made the determination that it's very likely that this individual could go and become violent in our workplace based off of the things that were happening. So we terminated him. And then he actually wound up going in and having to serve 3 months. And I monitored the even after he wasn't an employee, I still monitored the fact that he was in. But um but nonetheless, we gave him the opportunity to go through the trial process and waited until he was actually convicted. The thing is that I already knew he was convicted by the time we sat down and talked to him because I was paying attention. So those are things that you can do. Know as many of the answers in advance as you can. So that way when you have the opportunity to talk to your employees about things like this, you're giving them an open opportunity to tell their story and you're learning more. So just don't make rash decisions based off of partial information.
I think it's really important not to make rash decisions off partial information.
Yeah.
It is also important to understand, though, in terms of firing someone, it's not the same standard as convicting. You
No.
don't have to have beyond a reasonable doubt to fire someone. And there are things that employees do that certainly aren't illegal, like the guy wearing the name badge. It's not illegal to wear your company's name badge to a protest,
Right.
but you could probably fire someone for doing so. But what is important is you take that time to investigate. You don't win a prize for firing fast. And you may feel this pressure from the Twitter mob to do things quickly. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Put the person on leave, and it can be an unpaid leave. And then if you decide to not terminate or not discipline based on your investigation, you can pay them back. And this is really important, even when there's video evidence.
Yeah.
I've talked about this case before on this show, but a few years ago, there was a manager at a Chipotle who this guy came in through the line and she's like, you have to pay before I'm making your burrito. And he's videotaping this and he puts it up and it goes viral. And look, she's racist because he was black and she's making him pay before they make the burrito. And if you've been to Chipotle, usually you go down the line and you pay at the end. And so Chipotle immediately fired her and didn't do an investigation because the video looked terrible.
Right.
Well, come to find out, there were other videos of this guy bragging about how he would go to Chipotle, have them make the burrito, and then he would reach over the counter and grab it and run out without paying. And they ended up reinstating her. And I hope that they back paid her and apologized profusely. They didn't gain anything by firing her immediately.
Nope.
They should have conducted an investigation. And so even though you may have seen on Instagram or YouTube or something, a video of your employee doing something that you think is absolutely 100% fireable.
Unless they're streaking. Streaking is okay.
Did you say streaking is okay?
Yeah, streaking. You can fire them for streaking. You don't need to investigate that. Go ahead.
All right. Brenda has said you can fire people for streaking. Maybe we should change that to be the title of this episode.
Anyway, you were saying, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
In most cases, streaking aside, even with the streaking, it doesn't hurt you to put them on leave for 24 hours while you conduct your really quick investigation. You're going to want to do that. Just take a deep breath. And in almost all situations, you should not be making decisions like this when your blood pressure is raging, and just chill for a bit. Just do the investigation. And if you're really, really emotional about it, this is the time to bring in an outside investigator or something to do that. And of course, depending on, there was a guy who lost his job. He was the general legal counsel and head of HR for a business in Texas. And I would absolutely hold my general legal counsel and my head of HR to a different standard than my entry-level employee when it comes to what they do. Absolutely, I hold them to a different standard. If you are the general counsel for a company, you're representing the company, everything you do. You represent the company when you're shopping at the grocery store. when you're an entry level, analyst or a, grocery store employee or whatever, your time is your time. But if you're general counsel, that's a different story. So these things are not, and that can be part of your, policies as well. Like there's a level of employee that we hold to this different standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's okay. Again, you want to make this policy and um, keep to it regardless of the political views that you have and they have.
Right. Absolutely. So if somebody wanted to read your article, where could they find it?
Well, they can find it at Inc. And if you just Google Suzanne Lucas at Inc., you'll find it. Or you can go to my blog, evilhrlady.org, and it will be linked there.
Yay. And matter of fact, we are on social media. Normally we have our our social media all flashy up here, but we're having some technical difficulties with the program. So would you like to share with everybody how they can follow you?
You can follow me. Don't stalk me, but you can follow me. I'm really easy to find. The easiest places to find me on Facebook at Evil HR Lady, and we have a big group. There's 6,000 members now. Woohoo!
Wow.
I know. And it's a very active group discussing all things HR, and we don't discuss politics there either. So that is a nice place to get away from politics. We have discussed what we discussed here today on the video show, on the Real HR show. And that's a good place to find me, or I'm on Twitter at Real Evil HR Lady, and of course my blog, evilhrlady.org.
That's awesome. And I have a group too called the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. You guys can find us over there. We are a young and growing group. We're almost at 300 people in a year, which has been pretty fantastic. They're an awesome group of people. They're actually a load of fun. I've gotten a chance to know quite a few of them one-on-one and spent some time actually with a few of them as well. And they're good. So, we do a lot of the same things. We don't have the funny memes like Suzanne's group does, but
we have the best.
that's right. But Suzanne and I are in each other's groups and we do support one another in that capacity as well. And then you can also find me. Actually, I am on Clubhouse. So I am super stoked about that. I actually try and get on Clubhouse now Monday through Friday with different topics. Like Mondays, we're talking about getting ahead in HR. And if you are an iPhone user or have an iPad, then you guys can get on Clubhouse. Android, I know they are currently working on getting you guys squared away on Clubhouse, but Clubhouse is accessible only by invite right now. So if you know somebody, just go ahead and sign up on their waiting list if you want to get in, and eventually somebody will send you an invite. That is for sure. So, but I am on and love it. Absolutely love it. I'm just find me at Brenda the HR Lady. You can also find me at Brenda the HR Lady on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on YouTube, LinkedIn. Yeah, we got all the hot ones.
We're everywhere.
Well, that's right. We are everywhere. So, and then you can also find me on my website at brendathehrlady.com as well. Well, this has been kind of fun.
It has been kind of fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Kind of fun as well. I am in the tundra, as known as Chicago, so I'm going to go put something on my feet because they're cold. I'm not used to this kind of weather anymore. I think it's like, I woke up this morning, it was like 15 degrees. Whew.
Yeah, my goal is to get back to live someplace warm. So
well, this ain't it. I'm telling you right now, I am missing my 50-degree winters in Virginia right now, but that's okay.
Chicago is not on my list.
No.
Not.
So you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. We will be monitoring everything that's going on and definitely bringing forward all the real rich juiciness that we can. We've got 9 days left until the inauguration. So just buckle up because it's going to be an interesting week. So
yes.
No
All righty. We'll see you next week.
have a good one, gang.